Okay, so I think it's time to add something new to my channel. So I'm gonna start to make some videos of me reading you some revenge stories from Reddit. So this is a pretty common thing on YouTube these days. People love Reddit stories. Now, I got the idea to do this because I've been watching Reddit stories from one of my favorite channels, Smosh, where you're seeing Shane reading Reddit stories of different categories to two other Smosh members of his choice. And I'm going to be starting you off with some nuclear revenge. So I'm not just going to read one story. I'm going to read a few of them because one is not enough. So let's get started. My first story is, you want to hit a disabled person? Have fun with 30 plus years in jail. So, I'm a wheelchair user because of a fainting disorder, severe POTS, for those wondering. I came home from work to see a car parked right under a no parking fire lane, and on the sidewalk, it blocked the way into my apartment, and I had to leave the wheelchair in my car. I started taking photos of the car because this had been an issue with the owner for months. My landlord had told me to get photos of it and email them to him every time she did it after I mentioned it in passing. While taking a photo, the owner came out of her apartment and screamed at me. I stayed calm and tried to walk into my apartment. She got in my face to continue screaming, and by reflex, I shoved her back. She then grabbed me by the throat and began to punch me. After a minute, my neighbors and roommate who were having a smoke came running and got her off me. Police were called. Paramedics showed up because my neck was bleeding. She had acrylic nails. And I ended up going to the ER because I had a syncope episode while the paramedics were there. I decided to press charges thinking I'd just get an aggravated assault or something. I made sure that they got her while she was home because I knew she had a gun on the wall despite being a convicted felon. When the police went to arrest her, they found that the car was stolen without insurance. She didn't have a license. There was used needles all over the apartment with her 8-year-old child, and the gun, which was also marked stolen. Child is in foster care and she's in jail without bond. The DA said that her child recorded it. She apparently told her to, and it was already ruled as assault because of the overwhelming proof. Plus, the 7 counts of assault she gotten in the past 5 years already. Had I gotten her nailed with it outside her home, she would have only gotten probation since she was a parent. But now she lost her kid, her home, her car, is going to be in jail for about 30 years or more, depending on what the state charges her with for the drugs. Well, damn. This lady went in far. Man, that is intense. Alright, next one. Kill my cat, get smashed. This is a story from my childhood. I lived in a small suburban neighborhood in the 90s. We had 2 dachshunds we kept in a backyard fence, and 3 cats that just roamed our 1.8-acre corner lot in my subdivision. Of the 3 cats, Magic was the matriarch. She was a big, fat, black cat that didn't really run from any neighborhood cats or dogs. Our neighbors across the street had a pit bull that they would let roam the neighborhood. It was never aggressive towards me or my friends, but also was not a friendly dog. We just stayed away from it when playing in the woods. One day, that pit bull charged my cat while I was in the yard playing. I began to whip its head back and for a shaking magic. And I ran in to get my dad. We didn't have a gun for home defense. My dad kept a 4-foot-long galvanized steel rod that was about an inch thick next to the door, though. I've never seen him move that fast. He was on that dog in about 5 seconds flat. I remember seeing him strike the dog probably 3 times before it let go of magic. My dad said, "Come here, Doxy." We're going to the neighbor's house. He was pissed, shaking. When I got closer, I could see that the dog's skull was completely smashed. You can see blood and gray matter. It was gnarly. Its eye socket was also smashed. He picked up the dead dog, walked with me to the owner's house. The man answered the door and said, "What did you do to my dog?" And my dad said, "The same goddamn thing is gonna do to you if this happens to one of my kids." They never got another dog. We never saw them again, and they moved about a year later. Edit, I might be lost. I feel like the nature of dragging the bloody dog back to the owner and threatening them was the same for killing the cat, was revenge. But maybe not. I also always get these comments about animal cruelty and being a psycho or something when I've posted this story on Reddit before. I don't think you all understand how much this marked me. I focused on facts in this post, not feelings, because the feelings are very painful. It was 30 years ago now, and I can still remember very minute details of the scene. And I remember going on a roller coaster from terrified. I was going to die. And too scared my dad was going to die. Too scared and sad about magic and the dog. Too scared about confronting the parents. And then to a deep mourning of my favorite cat. Even to this day, it's the best cat I've ever had. Not sure why you expect this to be some kind of morality tale. It's just what happened. Well, they definitely did some justice by killing this pit bull. Even though the cat got killed, sometimes karma has to strike. And they did it well. Alright, let's find another. Just give me a second, I'm looking. Okay, here we go. Abuse me as a child? Teenage me might ruin your life. I've wanted to tell this story for so long, and I figured this was the perfect place. Apologize if the spelling and grammar aren't amazing. I've written this out in one sitting and don't have the energy to edit. When I was about 10 years old, my dad got a new girlfriend, Lauren. Lauren was an evil monster. When I first met her, she was lovely and friendly. I quickly liked her. But over the years, everything went downhill, fast. It started small. Lauren would steal my things, then deny it. Of course, everyone believed her. She'd tell me that my dad loved her more than me, and that if she wanted to, she could click her fingers and he'd never see me again. She read my diary, then told everyone what I'd written. She reported me to the RSCPA for abusing my animals, which I wasn't. After a couple of years, she had my dad beating me. Yes, I know he was an adult with choices, and I hold him just as responsible. She would constantly tell my dad how bad it was and encourage him to hurt me. After a while, he'd always snap and end up doing what she wanted. There are so many more things that she did, but you get the picture. My dad and Lauren separated when I was about 16 years old, but they had a house together still. It was around this time, as a suicidal, miserable teenager, that I decided I'd get even. I spent months on my plan, and this is what I did. I wanted Lauren's entire life to fall apart all at once, so everything had to be perfectly timed. I started by getting her fired and a minor criminal record. Lauren worked at a police warehouse for seized items, but naughty Lauren was stealing from the warehouse, so I made notes on what she stole. And once I had a decent enough list, I anonymously contacted her boss with my list. Lauren was immediately suspended, and after a few weeks she was found to be guilty of stealing. She was immediately canned and charged with theft, including theft of a Class C substance. Now Lauren was unemployed and pretty much unemployable. On to stage 2. Lauren with no income needed to sell the house as she was now unable to pay her mortgage. My dad also wanted to sell so he could move in with his new girlfriend. So I made the house unsellable and pretty unpleasant to live in. My dad and Lauren were stupid and never locked their back door. I didn't have keys, so I'd sneak in when I knew they were out and hide disgusting things. Bugs everywhere, old prawns hidden under floorboards, and even stitched some old prawns into the bottom of the curtains. Dead mice everywhere, including under Lauren's pillow. Live mice in the pantry. The house stank, and no one could figure out why. Estate agents refused to list it, or would only list it for far under the value, and potential buyers would leave quickly after no one could explain the source of the vile smell. Lauren was approaching bankruptcy. Exactly what I wanted. Only one area of her life left to destroy. Lauren had been in a relationship for a year or so with this guy. I can't even remember the poor guy's name. We'll call him John. Well, Lauren was cheating on John, and with his own father of all people. Poor John proposed to Laura. He needed to know who she really was. One day, when Lauren had John's dad over, I got in the house via the unlocked back door. I grabbed her mobile, which she'd left in the kitchen. It took a few attempts and a lot of house watching to get lucky with the phone. I texted John from her phone, pretending to be Lauren. I told him I was sick and asked him to come over. Of course, good old John rushed over. I unlocked the front door and texted him, letting him know to let himself in as I was in bed, sick. I left and hid around the area. The drama was intense. Lauren and John's dad, half naked, chasing after John in the street, screaming, crying. I think John may have even punched his dad before driving off. Obviously, the relationship was over, and John's dad even ditched her in an attempt to get his son's forgiveness. So Lauren was alone, broke, unemployable, facing charges, and about to be bankrupt. Sadly, I don't know how the story ends. I cut contact with my dad around that time, and thus my connection to Lauren was gone. I do remember my dad mentioning her being suicidal, right before we stopped speaking. So in my eyes, my goal was achieved. I didn't need to see the fallout anyway. Just knowing what I had achieved made more than enough for me. And that's the story of how I got revenge. Writing it out, I realized how unreal it sounds, but that's the whole story. That was good. That was some grade A nuclear event, and That was an A plus, I tell you. All right, I want to see if I can get one more, or maybe two. But let's see what I can find. All right, here we go. Food thieves at university got lessons from my food. I was reminded of this by a post somewhere else where someone asked if they could legally put laxatives in their coffee creamer at work because it was being stolen. In my first year at university, somewhere in the west of England, I lived in a large Georgian student house which had 23 or postgrads living in it, all lads. We had 3 kitchens, but some people would raid other fridges, and I was sick of people stealing my food. In microbiology, we were doing some experiments with an orthopox virus, whatever that is, thinking of it as a much less severe version of cowpox. Harmless enough, they let first-year students use it with only masks, gloves, and glasses. Anyway, one of my lab partners didn't use sterile techniques on her inoculating loop particularly well and ended up with a blister on her lip. She used to heat it too quickly and create an aerosol. Eventually, I was fed up with the thievery and took a little sample of said virus and added it to a block of cheese. A couple of days later, the 2 perps also had a couple blister-type lessons, and their mouths, around their mouths, which lasted a few days and meant they didn't want to go out. They had an inkling it was me, but I made some cheese on toast in front of them while inserting I wasn't cross-contaminating. So came away unscathed. The cheese gets hot enough to denature the virus. My food was never touched again, but I often think how risky this was. That's a pretty good way to get someone back with cross contact without actually killing them. Pretty good. Alright, here's another one. Haribo Revenge goes way further than intended. I'm pretty sure I know what this is going to be about. So, Guy Boy is the heck out of Kid. Kid feeds him Haribo sugar-free bears, and Kid is violently intolerant of sugar substitute. He craps out blood and busts some blood vessels in eyes. Goes blind in that eye. I was a witness to this a long time ago, and the results were learned by word of mouth. Once upon a time, there was a kid. Let's call him Marco. Marco was your everyday kid. A little skinny. I remember him being slightly geeky. If you let your pet unintended, he's disassemblable. He disassembled them before you turn back around in your seat at times. He was nice, polite, and fairly helpful. This was a middle school. One day, though, he does it to a bully. Let's call him Paolo. Paolo is huge, but with fat. He looks like if you drilled 3 holes in him, a giant could use him for bowling. He's not nice. He's not handsome. He's got a posse of equally disgusting friends who all gang up together to bully others. I suspect that if they hadn't ganged up with each other, they would have been bullied. Perhaps they had been in the past and got a taste of power over others when they ganged up. I don't know. I kept to myself. One day, I see Marco with a swollen eye and wet hair. He's limping a bit, too, and his backpack is ripped. I ask him what the hell happened. Turns out Polo threw him in the bathroom stall by his backpack, which ripped. The toilet got him in the knee, and Polo shoved his face in the water, giving him a swirly, bashing his eye into the seat. I asked why Polo had done this to him, and he says, as I took his pen apart, it was just a BIC Crystal, or some cheap pen like that. Things escalate over the next few weeks. Eventually, Marco has to take time off when Polo strips him naked in the bathroom, except for his boxers, and makes him shove them into the toilet. The school, being full of your typical old assholes, try to expel Marco for damage to school property, and does nothing to Polo. This is stopped by video evidence of the gang leaving the bathroom, laughing and rifling through Marco's backpack, then tossing it in the trash. When Marco comes back, he's different. He's not happy. He's quiet, subdued. He doesn't talk to anyone, and bruises magically appear on him between classes. He withdraws into himself and begins to look positively skeptical. Of course, no one at the school does anything except the one nice jock. He comes across Polo stealing Marco's backpack and folds Polo into a trash can. Of course he's suspended, but does it again when he comes back. The teacher gives up on suspending the jock after his parents threaten to sue. The fact that someone bothered to stand up for him, though, seems to have given life back to Marco. He starts opening back up and putting weight back on, and which is very good. One day, though, he's wearing a scarf. A very special, beautiful knitted scarf his grandfather had knit him. Yes, his grandfather, before he died. Polo steals it and comes back the next day with a bag of ashes, handing it to Marco. He laughed hysterically. Marco comes back the next day with a backpack full of sugar-free Haribo gummy bears. Polo, being the glutton that he is, steals every single bag of bears and eats them by the fistful throughout the day. Marco cries, but I remember something in his sobs didn't quite reach his eyes. Near the end of the school day, Polo lurches out of the classroom and bolts for the bathroom. He doesn't come back the next day, or the next. Someone says they saw blood in the bathroom. Polo comes back a few days later with an eye patch and fading bruises all across his face. I believe it's called a pegchitis. I don't know how to say that word. He's permanently blind in his left eye, and the bruising makes him look like a ripening fruit for as long as it lasts. He's in and out of school for doctor's appointments for a while. He didn't mess with Marco again, and instead it became very introverted and quiet. The reports of blood in the toilet of the bathroom he went to were never confirmed, but it's quite likely. Well, Marco definitely won this one when he gave Polo those Haribo bears. Needless to say, a Polo had a laxative effect, and he lost the battle in the war. I think there was a World War III going on in his ass after that. Alright, I think I'm going to give you one more. Let's see what I can find. Alright, this one's called Pedophile Gets His Entire Life Ruined. I've gotten permission by my older sister to write this story. I'm not the one doing the revenge here, rather my father, uncles, and a few gang members. My parents came to the United States in 1987, coming from Mexico. A few of my uncles and aunts were living there, or here, in South Central LA before my parents came. I have in total 5 siblings, 2 sisters, and 3 brothers. I am the youngest now, 18 years old. My sister is 3 years older than me, now 21. She was 13 years old at the time of this story. My uncles were gang affiliated, and my eldest uncle, now 62, was an amazing tattoo artist, which is relevant to this story. My dad wasn't a gang member, but was well known in our city for participating in gang activity, but was never jumped in. One of my uncles threw a party for his daughter's birthday. Practically anyone who wanted in the party was allowed to join in. I know, stupid mistake for them. Myself, my brothers, and mother weren't at the party, as it was also my mother's sister's birthday, and we enjoyed being around her more. But my sisters went with my dad, as they were close to my uncle's daughter. My sister was left alone sleeping in my cousin's room, since our parties always ended up going until the next morning. The door to my cousin's room did not have a lock. As my sister was sleeping, she felt something touch her. As she woke up, she realized it was a boyfriend of one of our older cousins, who is 17. Boyfriend was 19 at the time. Nothing was known beyond that until a month later, when my sister had finally told my mom. Brave of her, since she was only 13. Many people at that age keep quiet for years. By then, everyone in my dad's part of the family became aware of this, including my older cousin, the one with the pedophile boyfriend. She was heartbroken, but agreed on something with her dad. She set up her then boyfriend into meeting up with her at a local park. My dad, along with my uncles and a few members, waited at the park at around 9 p.m. Very lonely, barely lit, quiet at park. A friend of my uncle, known as Santi, had a small RV in which they waited in. The piece of crap arrived at the park. That's when my dad and the rest ran up to him and started beating the heck out of him until they dragged him into the RV. Once inside, they still continue to beat the heck out of him until they arrived at my uncle's place, the one who did the tattoos. Once they arrived, they took him inside where my uncle was ready with all his equipment and gave him some new artwork all over his face, neck, head, and hands. All over he had written indicating that he was a pedophile, including an extremely big tattoo across his forehead all the way to the right side of his head. They waited until he woke back up, now around 2 a.m. They dumped him in front of his father's house, not to be discovered by neighbors until the sun came out. My father left a heavy, well-written note on the door of the piece of crap's dad's house. This led to his dad giving him his own set of beatings and finally kicking him out of the house. Surprisingly, one of his friends let him stay with him for a while until a month after the incident. Two of his friends were found guilty of a murder charge. Apparently, the murder happened around 3 months before this whole incident. Pedophile was charged with a second-degree murder along with a few other charges. He was sent up to Chino Penitentiary. 2 months in the pen, he was raped. beat and finally killed by some African Americans getting shanked 3 times in his chest by a screwdriver. Not sure if this happened due to his tattoos, indicating he was a child predator, or if it was mostly a race thing. Regardless, if any of this didn't happen, he would have still been taken to the pen due to his conviction. So my uncles and father have no guilt for this. My older cousin understandably mourned his death for a while, as it was so unexpected for him to turn out to be such a piece of crap to this world. They were together 3 years prior to the incident. As for my sister, she is doing well for herself, currently attending Cal State Long Beach. I'm not sure if I can link his case on here or if it will be taken down. If you'd like to read about that, I'll send that to you privately to prevent this from being taken down. Well, that is a hell of a revenge. Obviously, this boyfriend got what he deserved. Being a predator and being beaten and killed in the pen. He got what was coming to him. Okay, I think that's enough. I'll definitely have some more Reddit stories coming up in the future. Until then, and I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video. And peace out.